My name is Chris Lopez, and I've got two people here with me today to talk about some current fix and flips. So the first guest is Kim Hubbard, who is the vice president over at Merchants Mortgage, who is a local, and Merchants Mortgage is a local hard money, soft money lender. And we recorded a podcast about a month ago that we released last week. And we talked a lot about hard money in her lending process. And after we were done the recording, I was asking Kim just about some recent deals and what she's seeing in the market. And she started telling me, I said, you know what, hold on. Let's bring some of these recent deals and talk about this on the website and the webinar, because I am not the only person interested in this. So Kim, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'd love to go through these deals.
And the other guest I have is Charles Roberts, who I think most of you know. He is an investor and also the president of Your Castle Real Estate. So I asked Charles to come on board to add some color and also to share some of the data that Your Castle collects on some fix and flips trends. So Charles, good morning.
Good morning, Chris.
All right. So, Kim, starting over again for take two.
No worries.
Tell us about this first fix and flip project that one of your clients recently sold.
Sure. Yeah. So I just picked this one randomly, but he is a very experienced client. So I wanted to disclose that up front. Not every deal will look like this for everybody. If you're newer, your profit, I'm guessing, is going to probably be less than his is, because he's got all of his systems down. He's got his repair costs really nailed down. He has a contractor that he's had for a long time who shares in some of the profits. So I'm also going to show a newer investor more realistically what their number might look like. So let's take a look at it. Okay, he bought this property in June of 2018. It's in Park Hill, near the Park Hill Golf Course. He bought it from a wholesaler, and the purchase price was $370,500. The wholesaler's fee is in that number. And this property is a bungalow in Park Hill. Pretty common for Park Hill, built in 1947. And he was lucky in that it already had a lot of updating. So it already had new hardwoods. All of the mechanicals were in good shape. The roof was in good shape. It's 830 square feet, and it had a full finished basement and a one-car garage, which was desirable for Park Hill. And before the rehab, it was 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom upstairs. And after, he completely remodeled the basement to a master suite. So that made it 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms.
So master suite in the basement.
That's right.
And then 2 bedrooms up on the main floor.
That's right. It was still desirable in that neighborhood, or desirable enough to have the master in the bedroom or in the basement, versus having to add on additional square footage upstairs, which would have cost a lot more. And it would not have made sense to combine the 2 bedrooms upstairs to make a master, because then you'd only have 1 bedroom, which would not have made sense for this area.
So do you know, for like the basement, I mean, basements can be, you have to kind of duck your head and kneel to get in. Like, was it a good sized basement? How tall were the ceilings?
Yeah, you'll get to see some of the after repair. And they did I just lost the word. I don't mean vaulted, the recessed ceiling that you'll see. So it gives it a good height feeling on it. Yeah.
Good. So as we move forward with this, I said this before, but guys, ask questions, pick Kim's brain, pick my brain, pick Charles's brain. We love questions, and we'll be honoring them throughout. So Kim, let's look at some photos, and I want to ask you some more questions about those stats you just went through.
Yeah. So we're going to look at the photos. As you can see in these numbers on the screen, his repair budget was $45,000. I think more realistically for a new investor, that number would probably be $60,000, and you guys can weigh in on that as well.
And how did you come up with that $15,000 difference? Is that just materials, or more labor cost, or more just everything because new people don't have their systems and processes and go-to place?
Both. Since the contractor is sharing in some of the profits too, there's not as much labor in there. And they also have the system really drilled down and are getting discounts on the materials because they're materials from project to project and a lot of the same vendors. So here we are on the before and after pictures. Of course, the before pictures are always the dreary, dark, sad ones.
Yeah.
And the after picture is the obvious one with the blue door. And that blue is actually becoming really popular. It seems to be pretty trendy. I've seen that on several projects now.
Is that the new gray?
I guess for the exterior it is. You'll see a lot of gray on the inside still, but on the outside, the pop is the blue, it seems. And so he redid the porch. It's got new concrete, new landscaping, a new door, new windows, and what you would do to make curb appeal for a flip. When we look at the fix and hold example, you'll see they didn't do nearly as much. And the next screen, we've got the before and after of the kitchen. So here you get into the white and grays, which is still really popular in the kitchen. And they opened it up, like a lot of flippers do, into the dining and living area, which you're going to see a lot better on the next screens. And new can lighting, new appliances, new cabinets, new granite countertops. So pretty much a complete remodel that you see in most fix and flip projects these days. And here's the before and after of the living and dining area. In this bottom picture, you can see how the kitchen was cut out to open up into the living area.
So I'm confused. I'm looking at the before, so the upper left photo.
That's the before, yeah.
Yeah, so the kitchen is to the right of that where the window is?
It is, yeah, Charles is right to the left.
To the left, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I just get my perspective here. Okay.
Very good. Charles is good on directions there.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned before, it already had new hardwoods. And so they just had to clean those up a bit. So that was great for them. The living area had a closet space in it, which they took out to have some additional space. And they put in that brick accent wall, which is really cool and appealing.
And that's just gorgeous. I mean, you're
beautiful.
thinking Manhattan high rise, with that open plan right there. That is absolutely gorgeous. So take note. This is the type of work you want to do.
Yeah, and the staging makes such a difference too. Sometimes you're even competing on the staging to have the staging look.
Are the bench stools, is that staging or is that?
That is staging.
That is staging, yeah, but smart, right?
Right.
It makes that's the perfect use of staging where you say, wow, I would like to get those. Maybe I'll buy them from the seller. It just
does make it look
wonderful.
Very high end. And like you said, Manhattan. Yeah, right here in Denver. And then we're getting to what they did in the basement. Now, this before picture is actually the upstairs bedroom. Before that was the master. And then you can see in the basement that they've put in the proper egress window to make it conforming living space.
Is that about 3,000? That's what I've been quoting people these days.
On the egress window? Yeah, I've seen like 3 to 5.
Really?
Yeah, I've seen as much as 5, I guess, maybe depending on what they have to cut out to get it to where it needs to be in the space. Yeah. And obviously a big, nice walk-in and a lovely ensuite bathroom.
So got a question here from Tara. She said, was most of the budget spent on the kitchen?
A good chunk of it was, like you usually see, it's spent in the kitchens and the bathrooms. Absolutely.
Do you know, like, just a rough percentage or amount?
I don't. Okay. I'm sorry. I can get that answer later for Tara, but I don't have the exact breakdown in front of me right now. Sorry about that. Then we'll go on to just the rest of the finish. There's the tray ceiling I was talking about, which gives it, a little bit more of a high-end, more room feel. And they put that nice fireplace on the wall, which makes it look trendy and cool. And you can see before the improper egress, well, really no egress window in the basement. And now, as I said, in the basement bedroom, it has the proper one that it needs. So
the whole basement is a master bedroom, or is it a bedroom living space?
It's this living space down there too that you see. Yes.
Okay, so you walk down the stairs in living space and then go to the bedroom.
That's right. Okay. That's right. Good clarification.
Yeah, man, that looks really nice.
Oh, they do a beautiful job.
Yeah, I can see why they've got their stuff dialed in.
Yeah.
But the great news is, listeners, like, look at something like this. What a great example of I mean, we're all just sort of in awe of how beautiful that looks,
I agree. So I think the next screen is going to take us into his profit on the deal. So he sold it, as you saw on the first slide, for $520,000. Then, of course, you have to deduct out all of the expenses.
And sorry, before we go through, you had mentioned earlier what did he list it at? Because it was listed. I think you said that. Maybe I'm.
No, I didn't. I said what we had it appraised at. I think he sold it for more than listing. Our appraisal was at 511, so it was pretty right in there with what he actually ended up selling it for, but sold it for more than list. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Now he bought it for $370,500. Again, that included the wholesale fee. His repairs, $45,000. I think more realistically for a newbie, $60,000 probably at least. And then our loan cost was a 2% origination fee, and we lent him 90% of the purchase price and 90% of the fix-up money. So his loan amount was $382.50. And then our closing costs are $1,800. Those vary a little bit. They're pretty low for the industry because we have a low processing fee that's in there, and our processing fee is $385. And then he had 4 months worth of interest on our loan because he held it for 4 months at a 10% interest rate. That's $12,675. Beware that there are fix and flip loans out there that have minimum interest requirements where you would have to pay the lender 6 months of interest, regardless if you only held it for 4 months.
Oh, really?
So we do only charge the interest that you hold the property for. And then he is an agent, so he didn't pay a full real estate commission. He paid 2.8% to the other agent. And then, of course, you're going to have some minor closing costs when you sell the property, the title insurance that the seller will pay for the new buyer, and property tax credit.
If I can just go back to the last thing. So he didn't have to pay 5.6, which is, probably 90% of deals are sold at 5.6. So that's a really significant savings.
That's right. Yes.
I mean, if you were a, not absolute expert and you're making 33K, I mean, you'd be down to 15. So, we actually teach a class on should an investor get a real estate license. Like in this case, if you're doing this kind of work, that would be one of the reasons why you might want to join your castle.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because that's a big portion of it. But he's an agent and he was able to save that money.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's a big deal.
Yeah. So he made $64,860. Now the number at the $33,000, I actually did take out a 6% real estate commission, like you said, 5.6, and I used $60,000 in repairs versus $45,000.
So I want to clarify. So that's the what if scenario. If it's the less experienced flipper with a higher cost and paying the full real estate commission.
That's right.
Okay, so that's 33. So
that's
it's not
33.
15, it's 33. Okay.
That's right.
I didn't actually understand
that. That's okay. No worries at all. And it might be less than 33 because, it might take you a little bit longer as a newer investor to sell it. You might not get the rehab done that fast. So I was saying like anywhere between 25 and 33, which would still be, a good return for a new investor.
So you deal with investors all day, every day. You've done it for a long time. Is that, what is the average or median? And they're probably very different profit numbers. What do you see? I know there's a range, but is it closer to 10,000? Is it closer to 50? Is 30 kind of normal?
30 would be kind of normal. That's a good spot that you picked there. And, a lot of our experienced investors, including this one, also this was not a difficult project for him. This one was an easy one, but he also does get into more ground up construction, and your profits are, if you do it right, larger on those. Usually when you're taking on more risk, you're getting more reward. And so we see larger margins on the ground up construction deals versus a deal like this. But on the typical flips, we're seeing probably 30,000.
And that's mostly for like the standard, more cosmetic stuff, not the major structural or rehab
right, not
issues.
Structural or anything like that. Most of them do involve complete regutting of the kitchens and the bathrooms.
So, Kim, I think we've talked about this in the past. I was a fix and flipper for years, and honestly, a pretty terrible fix and flipper. And thank God I survived it and got out. What do you see among your clients? What are like common characteristics of people who do not do well?
That don't do well. And Chris and I think talked about this on the last podcast that we did, is really letting the contractor get out of control with as in demand as contractors have been in Denver and other hot markets. If they don't really have their thumb on the contractor, they're losing money because the contractor may be walking with money to take it and pay his workers for some other job. And, they're marking up stuff. They're trying to upsell you on stuff. And there's good contractors out there. I don't mean to bash contractors, but if you're not on top of the contractor, those are where we've seen problems.
Okay. Now we've got a couple questions coming in on the lending. I'll circle back to you guys in a minute, but that's actually one of the questions I wrote down from your first slide, Kim, was talking about how this flipper is actually doing a profit share with the general contractor, which I've heard a few people doing it. And conceptually, it makes a lot of sense to me because then the GC has skin in the game as well.
Absolutely.
And wants to finish it, minimize expenses. And we don't know the splits, but what are the pros and cons to a flipper doing that with doing a profit share with the GC? Is it all great like it sounds, or what are the downsides to that?
For most part, it's been great. You definitely want to have a very well laid out partnership agreement with the contractor. I think, like you said, when they do have skin in the game or profit in the end, in the contractor's case, they are very dedicated to it. So we haven't seen many issues on it, but you still definitely want to have a very well laid out agreement with what's going to be done to the property. And, if you're going to go buy the materials and provide them for him, or if he's going and getting them, then you got to make sure he's not marking them up and all of that.
Chris, this reminds us of a colleague of ours who has done this out of state in Indianapolis, I believe, that we're going to have on a future podcast. And he did something similar. And he honestly is one of the few people I know who's really being successful buying out of state, living in Colorado. And he owns a whole bunch of properties in, if I have it right, I think it's Indianapolis. What he did is he partnered with a property manager and gave her, 20% or something, right?
Yeah, that was Vern. You're getting.
Oh, okay. Was it Vern?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was not Indianapolis. That was
else. It was Kansas City. But anyway,
yeah.
I was the wrong person I was thinking about. But Vern, you know who you are.
And he was on the podcast already.
Okay, yeah,
I'll
exactly.
link back to that.
Yeah. So it was Vern Harris. So we actually have talked about this, but it was really cool because one of the things he found was that if he actually partners with, in Sense, the on the ground property manager, he has been able to mitigate some problems. And he's had a bunch of problems. But I looked at him during the podcast and I said, Vern, that's brilliant. I don't know why more people don't do that, because it is difficult when you're 500 or 2,000 miles away from your properties, and it's a big risk, but it really has reduced his risks because she is just skin in the game. It's the same skin in the game. So I love it.
I wonder why people don't think to do it, or maybe it's just, they're just not educated to do it yet.
Well, yeah. I'm going to totally speculate from my experience in businesses, not doing real estate stuff, but people get greedy. I think what it is, they want the whole pie themselves.
Yeah.
And they think short term versus long term.
Yeah, I think you can say that about most of us most of the time.
Right.
That's quite true.
So that's a good point, Chris.
So I just put a link in the show notes there, or the chat box, to that podcast with Vern Harris that Charles mentioned. That's podcast 49, Out of State Investing with Vern Harris. Really interesting podcast. Like I said, Charles gave you a great summary of it. But Kim, I'm going to circle back around to a couple questions here. So Steven says, Kim, can you go over the lending particulars again, specifically the percent of money lent? So the 90-10 program, how that breaks down. So purchase price of $370,000 and then repairs of 45, right?
Right. So on 370,500, when we're lending 90%, the client is putting in 10% towards the purchase price. So they're putting in 37,000 on the purchase price. And then on the repairs, we're also lending 90% of the repairs. Some clients choose to fund the repairs on their own, and that's okay too. This client actually funded them through us, and we lent him 90% of the 45,000. And then he only had to put in 4,500, his 10%. So that adds up to a loan amount total for 90% of purchase price, 90% of repairs at the 380,250.
And remind us when he gets that 10% back.
His 10% down?
Yeah.
Oh, on the draw. So on the repair money, after we close this loan, we're going to have 45,000 in the account for him. He's able to submit his first draw right after closing for up to a third of that escrow account. So
and that's what I want to point out. He brings 10%. He brings 4,500 to. How much is he bringing to the table?
Let's see, he's bringing 37 plus 4,500, so
about
42.
41,
Yeah.
42,000 total.
Brings 42. So the reason your rates are better than typical hard money is skin in the game. We just keep saying the same thing. They're bringing some money. So he's bringing in 42, but the next day he can pull out a third of 45, meaning 15.
Yeah.
That's
so
a
you get some money back.
really important point. And that's why merchants, has value and been around since 61.
Since 1961.
You bring 42,000 to the table. Next day you get 15K back.
Yep, that's a good point.
Nice
Thanks
stuff.
for making
Like
that
I said,
for
people
me.
have skin in the game versus a 0%, down hard money loan. And yeah, $40,000, very few people are going to just walk away from that.
That's right.
I want it.
So less risk for us.
Yeah.
Allows us to put the money out cheaper. Exactly. And then we also don't want our loan amount to be any more than 75% of the after repair value appraisal that we'll get, because it has to make sense that the client can flip it for profit or get it refinanced if they're going to hold on to the property as a rental.
So you mentioned earlier, you guys had appraised the after repair value at $511,000.
Mm-hmm.
So you would take 75% of that, which is about $383,000, and that'd be the max loan, typically speaking, that you guys will loan on.
Yeah, so it's the lower of the two numbers, the
Okay.
90% of purchase price plus 90% of repairs, or 75% of the appraised value. In his case, it appraised where it needed to, just a little bit higher than it needed to, and so he got the full 90% of purchase price and 90% of repairs.
So kind of being a numbers guy, how often does the appraisal basically kill the deal? Is it 1% or 50% of the times?
Right now, it's just been about 1%. It's been low.
Seriously?
It's been very
Wow.
low. They've been very close. And we do work with a lot of experienced investors. And so, I think they're buying them right. And they've got their numbers right on the back end. If it does come in low, we can still do the deal, but the client would have to pony up the additional money. So
they have to make up the difference, basically.
Right.
Okay.
So if there's a big difference, usually people will, try and get a price reduction or get some sort of credit or walk away.
Right. It's the same thing as a conventional loan. When the appraisal comes in low, you have to come up with a difference.
Right.
Yeah.
So another question here from Julie says, Kim, what would your fees be for a newer flipper?
Mm-hmm. They're the same. We are the KISS principle. It's very easy for me on our loans. I don't have to keep a million different matrices in my mind or be quoting one pricing to one person and something else to another person. So we've just kept the model that we want to put our money out as cheaply as we can and still have it be a profitable business for us, because we have to stay in the game too. We want to make profits. So we price it at the 10% rate and 2 to 2.25% on the origination fee. And usually the 2.25% is going to be if you're doing more than 50,000 in repairs.
All right. And okay, Stephen and Julie both said thank you. So I think we answered their questions there. So Charles, I want to just kind of take a break from the deals for a second, because we were talking about before we went live on the webinar, just about some trends going on here. And so let's just take a break. If you can pull up some of the slides that you have from your castle, then we can just talk about that, because there's the data. And then of course, some interesting stuff on the market right now too, that we can talk about as well.
Absolutely. So we have a whole fix and flip class. And if you're listening to this live or in the next couple of days, Lon Welsh is going to be teaching this class, our Investor Success Summit on Saturday. And put a plug in for the Investor Success Summit. It's we've been doing it for 7.5 years. I put it together with Pine Financial, and Kim has been one of our vendors for years and years. And Lon will be teaching this class to learn more about this. So I'm just going to give you a couple of slides, a little bit of taste of the type of research we do. This first one is the number of fix and flips completed and sold, going from back to 05 and then going year by year by year. And what you saw, and Kim, I don't know if you've seen this. So this is
no, I'm loving this. I'm staring at the
screen.
screen. Yes.
So what
I
we
love
saw
your data.
is that we had kind of a peak around 13, 14 based on our data. We do a pretty good job of vetting this. I won't say it's accurate to the last 1%, because we're not PhD students who have like no lives to live, but we want to get the basic data. And the basic data is, you see the trend here, that it really moved up in 13, 14, and then spiked a little here, but this is now 17, first quarter of 18, and it's it's quite a bit lower.
So I mean, what is that transactions? I mean, that's
so this right here would say that in the first quarter or second quarter. Well, first of all, let's say in the last 12 months, we have had 265 fix and flips bought and sold. So we go to the MLS and we figure it out. It's MLS data per quarter. But if you look, for example, at this peak, I mean, if you just take 1, 2, 3, 4 quarters, you know, in my head, I can tell you that's about 600.
And we're back at looking at what, 2013, 14 timeframe?
Yep. If you go back, say, to 2005, 2006, and Kim, we were talking about this before we started, is what the heck was the world like back in the last downturn? It was actually the same numbers as we're seeing now. Isn't that interesting?
Very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, we're all kind of looking at this like, I'm not sure what this means. And I don't know if this has affected your business. It would be really interesting to know, were you doing more deals in 13, 14 than you're doing in the last 12 months? Do you happen to know?
I would say in Denver, we were doing more fix and flip deals, but we do have more clients now that fix and hold too. So that, you know, takes away from the fix and flip numbers too.
Right. We've seen that with a lot of our hard money colleagues, and we're going to talk about that next. Right. Because
we are,
you know, I mean, you know, Chris and I are more fix and hold type of agents and investors and stuff. That's a lot of what we do. And it made a lot of sense for hard money folks like yourself to move into that market. Right. Long-term wealth, there's a lot of money to be made with long-term wealth as well.
Yep.
Great. So some cool data here. This right here is average days on market to sell a renovated fix and flip. So once you put it on the market, and this is not particularly intuitive either. So you saw here in 13 and 14 is when we had tons of them. Okay. And we're actually have a lower days on market in the last year. Well, you know, the market has been very strong. Maybe it actually is intuitive. This period here, I guess it does make sense. We have the lowest days on market and really in recorded history. And I guess that has been helping the fix and flippers a lot as well. You go back to 05 and 06 when it was a much slower market. You were back in the 60, 80 days on market. We've been averaging right here, last 12 months, 24 days on market.
So there's been, essentially from the data, I want to make sure I interpret this. First time I've seen this data. Fewer fix and flips, you know, by volume the last year, but the days on market are 24 days versus a couple of years ago where there's a higher peak or more fix and flips. It was at 49 days on average market. Yeah.
So basically from 05 to today, we averaged it out. It was 49 days. We had a peak in 11. We can probably come up with reasons for that. But the average has been 49 days since 05, and the last 12 months has been 24 days. So that data, you know, is encouraging to a fix and flipper. It doesn't mean you're going to be a good fix and flipper. Believe me, you still have to be a good fix and flipper. But the market's been pretty helpful.
Yeah, and I think those things go hand in hand where you're saying there were more flips, and so they were on the market longer because there was more inventory. You know? So some of those things go hand in hand. I think it is taking a little bit longer right now than maybe some of the 24 days average. Right. But we all got so spoiled, you know. We were like, oh my gosh, it's been on the market for 2 hours and I don't have a contract yet.
And let's not forget that it has nothing to do with fix and flips. That has everything to do with the market. I actually I was teaching a class yesterday and I had an experienced agent with a straight face say, oh my God, the property's been on the market for 26 days. And she continued. And I just started screaming. I'm like, did you freaking just say that? Just stop. Just seriously. And she's like, you know, she kind of was a little eye rolling. Yeah. But it's like, oh my God, like that is what, and she's an experienced agent. Yeah. We're saying, we're just like terrified. It's been on the market for 26 days. Sorry, but do you remember that like average days on market is 90 days? I mean, that 4 to 6 months, that's a normal market. Normal. We have been nothing but abnormal the last few years.
Agreed.
And Kim, from as your perspective with the clients, the money you lend out, have you seen any differences in, you know, I'll say the more affordable home, you know, sub 500,000 versus above 500,000, recent changes in listings and how long it takes people to sell?
Well, ironically, a lot of our lower priced ones, like you're going to see in my fix and hold example, have been kept as the rentals.
Okay.
By the way, so that's the story of my life. You know, I was a fix and flipper 18 years ago, and I accidentally built up 29 properties because I couldn't sell them, you know? So I was just like the world's worst fix and flipper, but that sounds familiar, and I kept them and held them.
Okay.
And this example, he actually chose to hold it, I think, just for the cash flow. That was his investment strategy on it, because I think it would have sold really well.
So from day one,
Especially
the plan was to fix and hold.
Yes.
Okay.
Even though it's in a very affordable range, which everybody's clamoring to get these days, but he chose to keep it, I guess, for the appreciation and the cash flow, which what landlords do. Yeah.
Right. And, tax advantages, et cetera.
Sure.
Any more slides
one
on
more.
this? Okay.
Just a quick one here. So this is the average after repaired sold price versus average gross margin. I know that's a lot, but what we did is we looked at
first explain what those two things mean.
Yeah. So this is the gross margin. And what that means is the purchase price versus the sales price minus any concessions, because that's all we can know. We're pulling public RE Colorado MLS data. So we have to use the gross margin. We don't know if they made a profit, if they were great, or if they were bad, but we've got something. And then this is the sold price here. Okay. So what we did is we looked at these areas versus these areas, and these are all actual areas, but we give you a couple examples. For example, in U Hills, what we saw is the average sold price of a fix and flip was, call it 550,000. And the average gross margin was 200, meaning they bought it for 350 and sold it for 550. Okay. You had 200,000 in gross margin. So what you want to do, and we have more data on this, and you'll hear more about this at the Investor Success Summit on Saturday, is ideally, you want to be on the higher gross margin and lower price, right? You risk reward, you set it. You'd love to be buying $200,000 properties and in a neighborhood where you can make 200,000 in gross margin. Like, good luck, it's never going to happen. But it's fun to look at this. Does this make you a better investor? Statistics are cute to look at, but I don't actually think they really make anybody a better investor. And yet we still like talking about it. That's what I got.
Okay. So let's switch back over to Kim's slides. Okay. And then this is us jumping into the second deal, which is the fix and hold, right, Kim?
This is fix and hold, yes. Okay. Also an experienced client. He bought the property also in that time frame as the last client did. He bought it in June of 2018. It's in Swansea. So it's about 5 miles from Reno, which has gotten so popular, getting more popular by the day. And his purchase price was $186,000. It was originally built in 1888, much older, and a ranch with 934 square feet above grade and just a little crawl space, 112 square feet, which he ended up putting the laundry down there, and 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. He did not change that. Again, this is a rental. And it had a storage shed in the back and a driveway to park, which was perfectly acceptable in this neighborhood as a rental.
And how much updating did it have before? 1888, you can get some surprises when you start seeing
you'll see on my little list here. It wasn't horrible, but he did have to make some updates to pretty much all of the electrical, furnace, plumbing, roof. But he did not have to replace all of those. So there was some updating needed to those, as well as rehabbing the whole thing. But it only cost him $26,000. A lot of things he did that look really nice were actually very cheap. And there was enough updating to the other stuff to not make it super pricey on the rest of the updates.
Okay.
Yep. And then our appraised value that we got when he bought the property came in at $280,000. So that put our loan to value at 68%, which put him in a very good position to be able to refinance with a long-term lender to hold the property as a rental, because most conventional lenders are going to want that loan to value to be 75% or less to do the refinance. And so the reason a lot of investors come to us or other hard money short-term lenders to buy a fix and hold and then refinance it later is because they'll have a lot less cash tied up in the deal if they do our initial loan and then refi later, which we're going to show you what those numbers look like if you went straight to a conventional loan versus doing our loan and then a refinance. And so again, we lent him 90% of the purchase price, 90% of the repairs for a loan amount of $190,800. And he was able to get the work done and refinance with a conventional lender. About 3.5 months later, he paid us off here in September. Now, it's important to get pre-approved with a conventional takeout lender if you're going to use this strategy of using our loan and then refinancing, because a conventional lender's requirements are going to be more strict than ours are. Just because I can get you qualified doesn't mean that you'll qualify for a refinance. So we always make everybody get pre-approved up front with good conventional lenders.
So even you, when you do just even though you're not doing a back end loan, you still make sure they've got the conventional financing in piece. So I guess you're not stuck with the property and the loan then.
Exactly. Okay. If we know that their strategy is to fix and hold, we're going to want to have them pre-approved up front. And then the monthly rent on this property is now $1,800. And on the loan amount that he refinanced, the $190,800 at a conventional investment property loan rate of 4.625% on a 30-year loan, his principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, so PITI, is $1,148. So his net monthly cash flow on this project is $653. So good monthly cash flow on it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then let's look at the pictures. And again, it looks beautiful, but a lot of these things are done with cheaper materials, and they look pretty, but not as upgraded as a fix and hold. I'm sorry, we're not getting into pictures yet. We're going to look at how much cash he conserved by doing the two-step process of our loan and a refinance. So the first set of numbers is if he had went straight to the conventional loan, didn't do our loan. And so with most conventional investment property purchases, you're going to put 20 to 25% down. So 25% down on $186,000 purchase price, $46,500. Then you'll more than likely have to fund the repairs out of your pocket. You're not going to get those funded on conventional loans. So that's another $26,000. And then to compare apples to apples, you would have the payments on that loan during the fix-up period of $4,018 on the conventional loan. So his out-of-pocket would have been $76,000. Our out-of-pocket was only $32,381 because he only had to put 10% down, pay our origination fee, closing costs, and our interest payments. And then he refinanced into the long-term financing, and he did not have to put any additional funds down on the refinance. And so instead of having $76,000 of his own money tied up in the property, he only has $32,000 tied up, saving him $44,000, which he used to do another project.
So basically the 10% he put down to cover the initial acquisition through merchants and the 10% down for the repair costs plus the 2 points and some closing costs, that basically just got wrapped into the longer term conventional financing.
Exactly. Well, the whole loan amount that we did, the $190,800, got refinanced with the conventional lender because it was only at a 68% loan to value. Because at that point, the conventional lender is going off of the appraised value versus the purchase price. Now, you do need to make sure you're working with a conventional lender that doesn't have any seasoning requirements, meaning they're not going to make you hold the property for 6 months or a year before you can refinance it and go off of the appraised value.
Now, do you know for this case, the conventional lender and just in general, do they want a signed lease or a tenant in place first before they'll refinance, or will they just go purely off the, the appraisal?
In this case, they did require the lease in place.
Okay.
Yes. And that may have been, specifics to that borrower's qualifications or whatever, but there was a lease in place. Yes.
Good Julie says, Kim, any chance you know who the conventional lender was on this property?
Yes. Oh, I believe this one was Matt Knuckles with Denver Lending. I know Joe Massey with Castle and Cook, who you guys work closely with, has also refinanced a number of our deals.
You said Matt Knuckles? How do you?
Matt Knuckles, Nockels.
Nockles.
ELS, yep, with Denver Lending.
Okay.
And then Joe Massey with Castle and Cook does a great job. Does a lot of investor refinances. So we often refer to those two lenders. Of course, you can choose anybody that you like, but they are very seasoned in doing these fix and holds.
Great. Okay. And so the total difference there, you ran the what if scenario. If they just bought a conventional from get-go, $76,500 cash out of pocket. actually, in using a short-term loan, which has initial higher interest and a couple of points up front, actually saved $44,000 out of pocket.
Yep.
And that's where it takes the time to crunch the numbers and do some analysis, because you hear, oh my gosh, 10% or 15% or whatever, that's so expensive. But when you get into the power of leverage and how, all the numbers work with forcing value on the properties, you can do some really cool things.
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
A great means to a better end. Yeah, absolutely.
And do you know where this investor, where he sourced the property from? Wholesale deal, door knocking?
I think this one was, I think it was an out-of-state landlord. You'll see the pictures. It's not in great shape at all before. I don't actually recall specifically on this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
sorry
fine.
about that.
Yeah, let's look at some of these photos. I'm curious to see.
Yeah,
the
fun to
and the
see
afters.
before and afters on a fix and hold too. So obviously not as much work done on the outside as a fix and flip property. So we pretty much just cleaned up the landscaping some and painted the house. And in that area where it's artsy, it's going back to kind of those gingerbread house colors. So it's purple house, lavender with the purple trim is what he painted it.
That looks great.
Yeah, it's cute. The inside is really neat. And the before picture on the kitchen, obviously the before one is the oak cabinets and the yellow paint. And then instead of doing tile, again, this is in Swansea. It's like this, almost like a poster thing on the back.
Yeah, I'm pointing to the bridge. Like,
in that area,
is that?
It's kind of cool and artsy for being in River North area or not far from it.
Did you just say Swansea and artsy in the same sentence? Like,
right.
My goodness, it's how things have changed in our market.
Denver 2018. Right.
Wow,
so is that just
I didn't think I'd live long.
that's not a painting, that's just like one of those giant IKEA posters that people
it's like basically like wallpaper. Yeah.
That's a really neat idea.
Yeah, and he actually left, I guess maybe it's kind of retro, the lighting fixture there. Yeah. And of course new appliances, but they're not high end, you can see, but they look nice. Yeah.
And for those of you that can't see the photo, basically at the back where normally you put a backsplash and or some, upper cabinets, this is back behind the kitchen sink, the range, and a dishwasher, plus some other counter space. It's just this, giant poster. Was it probably like 8 feet wide and 5 feet tall? Of just, I think that's a bridge. It's like the Brooklyn Bridge in New York. It's at night with the lights on. Looks really cool. I've seen photos or pictures like that, friends' apartments over the years. I've seen it walking through IKEA over the years as well, very similar to that. But definitely come search this photo out if you guys aren't seeing it right now or on the recording, because it's actually a really neat thing that I've never seen before.
Yeah,
it's very
different
creative
idea. Yeah.
And I guess,
it's kind of shocking at first because it's different, but then it's like, that's cool.
But my first thought is, is there like a clear plastic, because it's just going to get like the way I cook, that thing can be ruined in like 3 weeks.
I think it is some sort of, laminate-y wallpaper type thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that.
I did too.
Wow.
Took me a minute to get used to it too, but I thought it was really cool. And then obviously big change from the before and after in the living area. So ripped up the carpet, refinished the hardwoods, took off the paneling.
So it looks like it was remodeled back in the 70s because it's green paint and half wood paneling.
And I think it was still a rental that an out-of-state landlord just ended up dumping and didn't fix it up.
Yeah, so what we're looking at now, it's, if you look at the before photo, it looks like it's a 1970s house that has been touched. Then it's half wood paneling, up to the chair railing, and then that puke green paint that was popular back in the 70s. And
the
now
carpet is probably looked worse in person. It's bad, but it doesn't look as bad as some of them.
Was it originally brown, or was it like white turned brown?
It might have been white. Just kidding. I put on the barn doors to the bedrooms and put in some light fixtures. So
and he opened up the kitchen too.
Yes.
I see the wall, so he opened up
the
kitchen.
Just left
to
the kitchen
open
bar.
Okay.
Yeah. So stuff that doesn't take a lot of money, knocking down that wall, putting in some new light fixtures, hanging up a couple of barn doors.
And do you know what type of flooring he used in there?
I don't.
It could be hardwood, laminate, vinyl. I've just been.
I actually think it's laminate.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. It is. I think I said finished. It's laminate.
It looks really good, though.
It does. Yes.
Especially
and again, finished it for a
rental.
But it looks, It looks very appealing. And then here's what he did with the bathroom. Again, cheaper to finish than you thought, than it looks in the end, because it looks really nice. So he took out the laundry and put that downstairs in that little 112 square foot space and opened that up to make it, a nice shower.
Is that the whole thing a walk-in shower?
That is a big walk-in shower.
Because the before photo looks like, if you're not the skinny person, you're going to be a very tight shower spot in there. But now that walk-in, we could.
That's interesting. There's only glass half of it, right? So that's far out enough. That
which again was like a cheaper, finish.
Yeah. And yet so cool.
It looks very nice.
Cool.
Yeah. Right. And then the vanity, that's small but appropriate for the space. Fits the space. Yep. Yeah.
So there's no bathtub in here then, right?
There isn't. There's just the shower.
Does that impact? Have you guys seen on either listings or that, does a house have to have a bathtub?
I think for sale, a lot of times it's going to need the bathtub.
There's almost never a have to. It's never black and white. But if you can have a bathtub, because what you have in rentals is a lot of babies, depending. If this is a penthouse suite, a 1-bedroom for $4,000 a month, you don't have babies necessarily. But the types of rentals that I do, everybody has kids. Everybody has babies. So, it's a judgment call.
Yeah, and I don't think you have to have the bathtub in the master. Like in my old home, we remodeled our bathroom and took out the bathtub and had this ginormous shower, like a car wash. But we did have one, we had another bathtub. Right. Yeah. So I think usually for sale or even rentals, most times people are going to want one bathroom at least somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. With a tub.
Yeah. I'm sorry, bathroom.
Of course they want one bathroom.
That's a funny story.
Bathtub.
Wow. Okay. Any more photos? This is.
That was it. So
really
I just picked out the one
good
example for each, and I would love to come back and maybe do like ground up construction with you too. And
I know we'd originally put that in the original webinar summary, but as Kim started putting the slides together and we started kind of outlining these two properties along with Charles's trend slides, we thought it might be too much. So we'll definitely have to come back and do like a ground up construction because those are totally different ball game than these two. But guys, we'll start wrapping up here. The people listening, so if you've got questions on these flips, if you got questions for Kim and what she can do at Merchants Mortgage, if you got questions for me and Charles, we'll definitely hang out. Put those questions in there. And I'm trying to think of other questions I have here. Julie says, great presentation.
I have a question.
Oh, go for it, Charles.
Where do you think the market's going?
Well, we're definitely seeing some flattening out, but I think it needed to. And we're still very steady. And so, of course, I hope it continues on that trend. I think Chris and I talked, I'm like, my crystal ball is always 2 years. Like, I think we have another really good 2 years, and then I don't know what.
Right. We said the exact same thing. Denver Post said the market will start to turn in 2021.
With a 10% correction, I saw the same article.
10.5. It doesn't take a lot of guts to say that. And I'm not
things are
complaining
safe
about the Denver Post. They have to print something to sell ads, but I don't know. You pretty much feel the same way. We'll be strong for a while, and then we won't be strong for a while, and then we might be strong for a while.
Yeah, and some of the reporting I think is accurate is that, we need to get back to having some affordable housing. People have been saying that for, all of last year, and then sales will start picking up again because a lot of buyers just have stopped looking and are just going to rent because they're not willing to pay the prices or can't pay the prices.
Question: who wins when that happens?
Who wins when the buyers choose to rent?
Yeah.
The landlords.
Right. So, you're
Fix and hold is good.
You're in a position where you actually can benefit because you very smartly in your company put together a package for landlords. Right?
Yes.
And we win as well. So the truth is, whenever someone loses, someone wins. It's a zero-sum game. So you might call something a disaster, but you know what was a disaster? Was 2008. And how can 2017 be a disaster when it was the exact opposite market? Because the other half of the people lost in 2017. It's just so interesting to think about it this way, that if you've been in real estate a long time and so have I, there is not a day that goes by when someone doesn't say this market is abnormal and disastrous. And you get inured to that over time. So I guess I'm speaking to, folks who are listening to understand it's not about the market, it's about you. And I can tell you,
and adjusting.
We created your castle during the downturn. It was the best thing that ever happened to us. And we plan to do the same thing if we have a downturn. And I, as a private investor on top of that, am set for a downturn. So stop complaining about the market. Just use that time to actually build yourself, build your business, work with people like him, and do what makes sense. Because whenever someone wins, someone loses. You just need to put yourself in a position to win no matter what.
Yes, there's always opportunities. You said it so well. We've been in it so long, and we see that investors can do well in any market. You just got to adjust. Yep.
So a couple questions here, and I was waiting for these questions, Kim. So they're very similar. So I'll start with Phil's question. How are your investors finding properties they like?
Actually, we are still having a lot of clients buy through wholesalers. There's some good local wholesalers. You still have to look at your numbers. Don't trust the wholesalers' numbers. It's your deal, your investment. But we're still seeing a lot.
And do you have like percentages of just, can you rough back the napkin math, like, hey, so many percentage of our clients get deals from wholesalers, so many of this are from things they drum up, so many of this are from MLS properties. Do you have like a rough percentage?
Well, at least a good half of our properties are through wholesalers, and some of their deals are even from the MLS. They're just sitting there 24/7 on MLS, finding deals that, a normal person with a job might not have the time to be doing what a wholesaler is doing.
So about 50% from wholesalers. Yes. Where's the other 50%?
We very rarely have any that are bank owned. There's not much of that in the market at all anymore. And so the rest of them are just the typical scenarios, estate sales where the parents have died and the kids don't want to fix up the house and want to get it sold. Some divorce situations, any of those typical fix and flip situations where the seller is in distress, some out-of-state landlords.
What percentage are MLS?
They're a good percentage because, like I said, even a good percentage with the wholesalers, which is where about half of our deals are coming from, are MLS too.
Okay.
So a very good percentage. Yeah.
And Steven said, any recommendations on wholesalers, or is that something he should contact you directly offline with? I don't know what the, I know that could be.
We're all looking at you.
Yeah.
I'm turning to you, Kim, so you speak.
Rather than doing maybe public advertising for some and not for others. My number, is that okay if I give out my number?
Yes.
So my number is 303-898-1366. Thanks.
Say that again, Kim. I'm typing
Sure.
in.
It's 303-898-1366.
All right. So there is Kim's direct contact number. So as you guys are listening to this webinar, if you've not gone back and listened to the podcast that Kim and I did, and we published it actually about a week ago, I think it was episode 55 or 54, just says lending with Kim Hubbard and Merchants Mortgage. Definitely check it out because we go into a lot of details about the lending process and some different lending products that Merchants Mortgage has, and also just, her different experiences, some common mistakes she sees investors make. So if you guys are interested in this, want more details, definitely circle back around to that podcast. And we got some more podcasts coming out in the future with some fix and flippers and also some other hard money lenders. So we'll be having not exactly a mini series, but just more content coming out around there. So Charles, Kim, any parting thoughts or things that you want to cover before we wrap up?
I just want to thank Kim. This is phenomenal.
Yeah. Thank you. I love seeing.
How long have you been in the business?
21 years.
How many deals do you think you've overseen?
I actually know that number. Well, I might not have it up to today's date, but in the time that I've been at Merchants, we've done $1.6 billion, and it's like 5,700 loans.
Wow.
Yeah.
Would you believe I've been in business 21 years? Yeah,
I
started being an investor 21 years ago and then got my license about 14 years ago.
That's awesome.
Weird coincidence. Yeah, we're still here.
We're still here. And like I said, if you stick with it and learn how to adjust, you're going to do well.
Yeah, it's not about like IQ. Speaking for myself, I can tell you that.
The same.
Yeah.
No, not about you, about me.
Wait a second. I'm supposed to argue with you.
All right. Well, Kim, Charles, thank you. I appreciate it. And everyone out there listening and watching, thank you. And if people are listening or watching the recording, got questions, reach out to me, reach out to Charles, reach out to Kim. All of our contact details will be where you can find it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.